Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So my shrink looked right at me, and he gave me the news. And it made me think two things right off the bat. It made me think, I'm not going to kill myself. And also, I am not as interesting as I thought I was. Let me back up a little bit here. I had been having suicidal thoughts for weeks, like 2 weeks straight. They'd crept in a little bit at first, and then I literally couldn't fall asleep because of them. Now, I didn't think I was going to end my life. I'd never been suicidal. I'm not suicidal. I wasn't suicidal then, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And the thoughts became invasive. Like I said, they were keeping me up at night. They were what I was thinking when I was waking up in the morning. And, well, I've been seeing this shrink for a little while, and he'd pronounced me very depressed, but also highly sane and stable. So this was a new wrinkle in the situation. I came to him, I was like, I don't know what to make of this. And he's like, do you feel like you might actually want to end your life? I was like, no, last thing in the world I want to do. I'm very attached to the concept of living. I just can't stop thinking about this. It's completely grim. I keep thinking about how I would do this and how I would make it easier on my family and what I would leave to who and all this stuff. It's very detailed and it's very morbid, and I don't get it whatsoever. What's wrong with me? What's going on with me? What is my mind trying to do to me? And he was like, you're not on any medication. I know this because I haven't prescribed you any. Is there anything that you're taking that is different? And I was like, well, just St. John's wort. I don't know if you've ever come across St. John's wort. It's sort of like an over-the-counter antidepressant, I suppose. It's supposed to be very mild. And a friend of mine who'd struggled with depression was taking it. And his wife, who was a nurse, was like, oh yeah, it's sort of got similar stuff in it to some serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and it sort of does a lot of the same things that antidepressants do, but it's very gentle, it's mild, it's natural. And I was like, well, just St. John's wort. And he was like, discontinue it immediately. I was like, what? He was like, discontinue the St. John's wort immediately. And I was like, well, but how could that have anything to do with anything? He was like, you're taking this stuff, and it has been shown in very small numbers of the population, but it's well documented. There's enough data hanging around to show that it produces suicidal thoughts in certain people. You went from having no suicidal thoughts to having lots of suicidal thoughts right around the time you started taking St. John's wort. We can't say with 100% certainty that that's what it is, but that's what it is. And I was like, gosh, wow. And like I said, the two feelings that I had when he told me this were, okay, whew, that's relief. I'm not going to kill myself because I didn't want to. I had no desire to. But when these thoughts sort of invasively creep into your day and take up a lot of your day, you start to wonder what the hell is up. And I was going through all sorts of stuff and was working through all kinds of things. And it made me just think that I had something deep and interesting and different and psychologically exciting going on in me. And boy, my shrink couldn't wait to get his hands around this one. Nah, stop taking the pills. The thoughts will go away. And they did. Just like that. And I think that's one of the things, if you've ever been to therapy, you might have experienced a similar thing. One of the things about doing that is your shrink has seen someone like you probably 1 million times. And look, we're all different. We're all individuals. We've all got individual things that make us tick, make us do the things we do, think the things we think. But also, since the dawn of time, there's been people like us that have had the same problems as us, and they've seen it all over and over again. And I think that's one of the interesting things when you pull back and look at massive amounts of data about people. Yes, we are individuals, but we're not the completely unique snowflakes that we find ourselves to be a lot of the time. I thought I was going to be so interesting and entertaining, and there I was. What medication not to take 101. And I thought about this. Today, how we're not that different, how we're not that special, how patterns repeat themselves throughout history, when I realized it was the anniversary of the financial crisis that has basically shaped today's politics. We're falling into a trap. We need to try to recognize that trap and avoid it. We'll get into how and why next.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
You want to believe that you are an individual. You want to believe that you're special. You want to believe that you're different. You want to believe that you are unique and unlike anybody else that has ever walked the face of the planet. Now, of course you are. Of course you are. There's only one you, and nothing can take that from you. And I know you want to feel all these things because, well, I've wanted to feel these things too. It's sort of a human need to be recognized as an individual. But, like I was saying, there's patterns that repeat themselves throughout history, throughout humanity. We see them over and over again. Like I was saying, when I went to my shrink for a little while, one of the more disappointing things to find out was that I was not necessarily as interesting as I thought I was. There were various instances where I went into my shrink's office and been like, I can't even imagine that he's ever seen anything like this. I thought that, and it means that. And he was like, oh, yeah, sure, that's pretty common. And every time I thought I was a special, interesting, different kind of snowflake, unique in my individuality, I could basically find myself in a reference book. Oh, Psychological Profile 101 in the How to Be a Psychologist Handbook. And it's disappointing, I suppose, to find out that you're not as unique and different and special as you might think you are in some way, shape, or form. But also, when you realize that patterns repeat themselves, when you realize that a lot of people have been through the things that you've been through, well, that gives us a helping hand as we make our way in this world. Helps us win the game of life. Helps us figure out what's going on, what's up. But here's the weird thing. Call it data, call it history, call it what you will. We, as human beings, we get so caught up in our individual emotions. We get so caught up in how we feel right now and the idea that nothing like this has ever happened before, that we are quick to forget the lessons that history teaches us. We're quick to forget the lessons that science teaches us. Over and over again. You've heard it. It's all just a little bit of history repeating. It's a great song. It's all just a little bit of history repeating. It doesn't matter what it is. Chances are there's been some iteration of it that's happened before. That goes for music, that goes for politics, that goes for religion, that goes for literally almost any single issue that you could point out in this world. There's something that has mirrored it, that's happened probably more recently than we would like to admit, because it means we're quick to forget. And the reason I bring this up is because, well, it's two things. Today's politics. If you're like a lot of people, you are bemused because the level of division that we see in America is maybe unlike anything that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And so we don't know how to deal with it. We're not equipped with it. We don't know why it's happening. We don't know what's going on. Everyone's talking about this shaky new territory that we're entering. Everybody's talking about how the world is going crazy. Everybody's talking about how the world is so unpredictable. From Trump to Brexit, things all across the globe are happening that you have never seen before. How can we possibly know how to cope in this new and unbelievably divided age? We're at each other's throats. Whatever happened to America? Whatever happened to doing for each other? Whatever happened to... Well, here's the thing. These might be new emotions to us. They might be new in our adult lifetime. But history, if you wind it back just a little bit, history will provide clues. History will educate us as to what's going on right now. And the reason I'm thinking about all this is because, well, do you know what it's the 10th anniversary of? This time, 10 years ago, things were about to go incredibly unwell in the world of American finance. 10 years ago, things weren't looking too rosy. This is when we hit that subprime mortgage crisis. This is when Americans had their pigeons come home to roost because they'd been buying things that they had no right to own, left, right, and center. This is when the housing bubble burst and precipitated something that wasn't quite a depression. But I think economists and historians sort of agree what we are coming out of was the greatest recession since the Depression. And it was very nearly a depression. We weren't at the brother can you spare a dime soup kitchen stage in the game that our great grandparents were. But we got pretty close there for a second. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the collapse of Lehman Brothers, the biggest bankruptcy filing in U.S. history, and a major catalyst of the financial crisis. And so, well, I want to talk to you about the fear and division that you see in America, how it seems alien, and how, well, it's not. It can be traced back to this financial crisis, and you can do this over and over and over again as you look back at history. And the reason we're going to do this, the reason we're going to take this little walk down the uncomfortable fiscal memory lane today is to help us be stronger, help us fight against the division that exists in America, and to help us, for once, learn from history.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So how did you do when the housing market collapsed? How'd that work out for you? Did you lose your home? Did you decide to foreclose on it because it just made financial sense? Are you one of the people that held on to the house? And now you're back up in the game. You're no longer upside down and you're the right side of everything. Whatever the case may be, if you were even vaguely approaching adulthood 10 years ago when the housing market collapsed and precipitated the beginning of one of the biggest recessions in the history of the American economy, we all remember it. I actually kind of got lucky on this one because, well, I decided that I was going to buy a home. And I didn't really realize the housing market had collapsed. I didn't realize that so many people were foreclosing on their homes because it just made sense. I didn't realize so many people were having their homes foreclosed on. I just knew that I'd seen some home flipping shows, and they all went something like this. Oh, we bought a foreclosed house. It had some damage. We fixed it. Then we put new countertops in the kitchen and the bathroom, and we sold it for a profit. And I actually did that a couple times. I didn't realize how fortunate I was with my timing. All I knew was it gave me a means to kind of survive because radio, not that it really pays the bills now, but it was definitely not paying the bills then. So, as I was building my radio hobby into something that vaguely resembled a career, I actually flipped a couple of houses. And then I was looking to do it again because I was like, well, I appear to be doing well with this. That business model went away. I was living in Houston, Texas at the time, where I still spend a lot of my time because of my work for 94.5 The Buzz and KPRC, which this station airs on. And all of a sudden, the market started to right itself. It started to correct itself. Housing prices went up. There weren't anywhere near as many foreclosed homes available. The competition for them was a lot more stiff. And foreign investors were buying them up for cash, left, right, and center. And I was like, man, I guess things are changing. And I remember one of my best friends and my real estate agent was like, well, this is par for the course. It's time to find yourself a different investment model. Maybe buy something brand new and then live in it for a little bit and rent it out, which is what I wound up doing. And you know what? Maybe we're on the brink of another financial collapse. And when that happens, hopefully, I'll be on the right side of history and I'll be able to perhaps buy some deeply discounted properties. I don't know. I do know this, though. I saw the ebb and flow of the housing market, and I saw that I was in a very fortunate position looking back. I didn't realize it at the time. I was just a stupid kid that got lucky and watched some home flipping shows on HGTV because I was mostly unemployed. But I was able to kind of sort of get up in the game, and I got a bit of an education as to how these things work and evolve and change. And I bring this up because, well, this weekend marks 10 years since the collapse of Lehman Brothers. It's the biggest bankruptcy filing in U.S. history. And it was a major precursor for the financial crisis. The biggest recession since the Depression, I think people called it. And I bring this up for two different reasons. One, we failed to learn from history when it comes to making smart financial decisions. Boom and bust has happened over and over again. But if you're like me and a lot of people, you spend a lot of time thinking, oh man, all we're doing is fighting with each other. Is it the internet? Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? It might be a lot of those things. But today's politics, today's incredibly divided version of America, today's version of America that I wish we could rise above, today's version of America that has us scared of one another as opposed to working together. Well, it's all just a little bit of history repeating. And it has a lot to do with the fact that we're coming out of a financial crisis. Now, a lot of people say that, people were operating on fear in the 2016 election. And people might have made different decisions had there been a couple extra zeros at the end of the balance of their bank account. And you know what? Those folks are right. Absolutely. The financial climate, the fact that we're recovering from this massive financial downturn, allowed politicians to work their incredibly divisive magic and separate Americans. Divide and conquer. And divide they did. Conquer they did as well. In some cases. Not all. But this was something that was palpable going into this election. Well, this past election in 2016. What did you hear from the right? A lot. You heard people calling establishment Republicans, old school, kind of down the middle, a little bit sort of more laid back about their Republicanism. Republicans, rhinos. You Republican in name only, you traitor. I could never vote for an establishment Republican. And on the left, you saw that Hillary Clinton had to swing much further left politically to keep up with someone who is a bit more extreme, like Bernie Sanders. That middle ground, that sensible, hey, I can get along with you if we think differently, middle ground, was empty. Still is. I know, I'm here hanging out. You're here hanging out with me. So chances are you believe there is a possibility that we could, get along with folks that voted differently from us. But the vast majority of America does not feel that way. The vast majority of the rest of the world does not feel that way. When I talk to friends of mine in England where I grew up, they're like, oh, people are so divided and angry at each other right now. Can't really figure out why. But their version of Trump was essentially Brexit. Meaning, something that people had talked about for a long time. Something that people had said would never happen. And something that people were shocked and aghast at when it did happen. Trump, Brexit, very similar situations in England and America. So it's not just us. It's a global situation. And well, England were coming out of a similar financial crisis. They had what were called austerity measures in England, which basically said, hey, entire nation of England, get used to tightening your belts because you're going to be poor. Now, they have a long history of class warfare in England, meaning upper class, middle class, and never the twain shall meet. We're Americans. We're in a country that is founded on the idea that anyone from anywhere can make anything they want to of themselves. In England, it just didn't work that way. Unless you had a certain family, a certain fiscal background, a certain history behind your name, there was a very good chance that you wouldn't really be able to go to college. And this existed up until the 60s and 70s. And now, mentally, those shackles of class warfare still exist. Obviously, anybody can do anything they want to in this world. Doesn't matter who you are or where you go. But a lot of people feel as though there's a ruling class in England, and if you're not part of it, you never will be. So therein lies the difference. But the idea of division is the same. This is a global situation, the political situation where people are so unbelievably divided and swing so hard right or so hard left. It's happening all over the world, and it might be unique and new to us in our lifetime. But let's take a little bit of a look at the history of the financial crisis. Like I said, 10 years ago, Lehman Brothers collapsed. Biggest bankruptcy filing in U.S. history. Huge precursor of what would be the worst recession since the Depression. A lot of people thought we would fall into a depression. See, for a lot of people, the 2008 election was, well, it was more than Obama versus McCain. It was the end of the time where people trusted and respected major political institutions. Now, if you're like me, you believe that we take way too much for granted. The government tells us to do something, we go, okay. We forget our taxes pay their salaries. They should answer to us, not the other way around. But we've been conditioned. I think it's time we broke that conditioning, and maybe we are. But as much as I believe in questioning everything, questioning authority, and keeping your eyes on the fact that these people, in theory, work for us, I also believe in respecting the office of the president. I believe in our process. I believe that we, as Americans, in many ways, oftentimes, get the government we deserve. But in 2008, when Obama became president, I think that was the first time I remember in my adult lifetime, people losing respect for the office of president. And, well, that was just a whisper, a precursor of what would happen when Donald Trump was elected. The whole hashtag not my president thing. Boy, that really got moving. So in 2008, we were losing faith in our elected officials. We were losing faith in major institutions. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that a Lehman Brothers, which was supposed to be around forever and ever, amen, went bankrupt. And when people started seeing exactly how this happened, I mean, we often like to point the finger of blame elsewhere. A big chunk of the reason why there was a financial collapse in America is that Americans were buying things that they had no right to buy. You can't actually afford those houses. You can't actually afford those cars. And just because someone's willing to sign you up for it lickety-split doesn't mean you should be buying those things. But we were greedy little piggies at the time. Bigger, better, faster, more. MySpace was a thing. People were showing off on MySpace. People, for once, were like, I'm awesome. I've got my own little corner of the internet. Before that, nobody had websites. But now, all of a sudden, everybody had their own little corner of the internet. They were taking pictures. They were talking about how they were great. They were expressing their opinions. They were uncontested. It was one of the first times that people saw that they could be famous for doing nothing, with Kardashians and MySpace and all of the above. So we wanted everything, and we were preconditioned to not really accept the responsibility for it. And when Lehman Brothers went kaput, a lot of us looked at that and went, that's a massive financial institution. That's a massive financial institution that should not go kaboom. Is this the end of the world? Man, we never really questioned the name Lehman Brothers in the past, but we're questioning the hell out of it now. Let's question a whole bunch of other stuff. How is this possible? How could the government not be prepared to stop the fiscal sky from falling? At that point, we all kind of sort of became Chicken Little. And, well, when everything's going tickety-boo and you're driving a nice car, living in a big house with lots of new stuff and clothes, and your MySpace page is getting a bazillion hits, and you go from that to, I got to give up my big house. I'm now sort of back on the couch living with mom and dad, and they're not doing so well either. You start to look around. Start to look around at who you're going to blame. You start to look around for an answer. How did it all go wrong? Everything was going so right. Why did the government not look after us? They didn't stop Lehman Brothers from collapsing. They didn't do the right things to prevent this financial crisis that caused me and my parents and all of us to lose our houses. They did not take the keys to my brand new car. They did not prevent the keys to my brand new car being taken away. Must be their fault. And if they're not looking after that situation, what other situations are they not looking at? How come the government didn't step up? And, well, that was the seed. That was the inkling. Looking around for someone else to blame, that was the beginning of the division in America. Now, you might be one of those people that says, the fiscal upturn is all because of Obama. The recession was because of Bush. Or you might be one of those people that's saying, oh, thank God Donald Trump fixed the economy. And there's certain aspects of the economy that are actually looking pretty good at the moment. But at the time, people were angry, people were broke, and people were looking for someone to blame. And that was where we got into some dangerous territory. And that is why, well, we'll get into it next.
Most every day, you're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 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 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD again. Nobody rock nobody better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD again. Nobody rock nobody better than me.
So like I said, we are celebrating a rather unfortunate anniversary this week. We are celebrating, well, looking back with regret on the fact that 10 years ago, right around this time, Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy. The biggest bankruptcy filing in the history of the U.S. And the reason that I bring this up is because, A, we don't want this to happen to us again. And we do a horrible job as human beings, not just in America, all over the world. We do a horrible job at paying attention to history's answers. Now, there is a bit of a fiscal upturn at the moment. There are some things that are actually kind of sort of looking good. I don't know if you've been following it or not, but, well, there's optimism. There's optimism around small business. It's at its highest level in August. There's been all these tax cuts. There's been deregulation. This means more money's floating around. This means more stuff is selling. This means more people can hire. This means more jobs. This means more people investing. Small businesses. It's a good time. Or at least that's what people think. People are optimistic. And if you dig a little bit deeper, you see that the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index reading climbed to, what is it? Let's see here, 108.8 last month. And the last record was 108. Now, this is just basically a way of measuring American confidence in American business, but it hit 108.8 last month, the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index. That smashes a record that was set back in 1983 during the Reagan administration. A lot of people going, oh man, it was great when Reagan was president. We all had money. Shoulder pads were big. Dallas and Dynasty were the shows because, well, we could relate to that being the wonderfully wealthy country that we were. Are we back in the glory days of the heavily moneyed 80s? Well, the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index would indicate that we are. And then there's a whole idea of employment being easier to find than it has been in the past. The number of available job postings outpaced the number of unemployed people by 659,000. The number of available job postings outpaced the number of unemployed people by 659,000 in July, meaning there are more jobs than people, meaning you can probably find employment if you really want to in America right now in the year 2018. This is the largest share of workers since 2001 that have quit their jobs. What does that mean? People are quitting their jobs. Why? Because they feel like there's better out there. They feel like they can be business owners. They feel like they can be entrepreneurs. They feel like they can tell their boss in this economy to take this job and shove it. I'm going to create something on my own. That's a beautiful thing. I love that. The fact that the largest number of workers since 2001 quit their jobs means that more Americans are confident enough to bail on their jobs in search of a better job or the opportunity to start their own business. And you might be one of the people trumpeting about how great the financial world has been since Donald Trump became president. But people on the left might have something to celebrate kind of soon when it comes to the idea of what people are paid, just because hourly wages could be getting higher too. Wages rose in August at the fastest pace since 2009. These are good times. Or at least we're coming up on good times, at least according to the statistical data. I don't know how your life is. Mine has not changed even a little bit. But, you know, that's my own stupid fault. I'm in radio. Yeah. It's my own stupid fault for being in radio. I love doing what I do. I love sharing the time I share with you. And you know what? Someday I'll figure out a way to do this and eat as well. Be able to pay rent without selling blood. But you see what the key is there? You kind of recognize the weight of your own choices and the weight of your own decisions. Now we're coming up on what very well could be a boom time. And I want you to remember where we were in 2008, 10 years ago. When everything collapsed, everybody had been living high on the freaking hog, buying things they had no business buying, not making smart, wise decisions with their life savings and the houses that they were buying and all of the above. So, as we're making our way into this, bear that in mind. There will always be a correction in one way or another. But the thing that I really want you to remember about where we are now, this incredibly divided country that we exist in, that we don't ever remember being this divided in our lifetimes. Well, the economy is healing itself. The economy is getting back on its feet. But the division has not gone away. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, two more disparate individuals you could not have hoped to encounter in any election. And that was where the country stood. Far left, far, far left. Hillary Clinton, not left enough. She was going to have to swing further left than she'd ever been before to get on a level with Bernie Sanders and snag the nomination from him. Donald Trump, who'd been a bit of a joke in the past because, well, all the reasons he'd been a bit of a joke in the past, was the most extreme and therefore the most viable option for people on the right. And the middle, sensible, hey, we can get along with people even if we voted differently than them, that became a lonely place to be. And you know what? We think we're special and unique and different because we're living through this division. Oh, no one's ever dealt with anything like this before. No, not so much. Data will show after a financial downturn, after a recession, after a depression, after a banking, a currency, or a debt crisis, data shows over and over again that centrists, moderates, people in the middle who hang out being sensible, getting along with people, that number drops incredibly. The left and the right-wing radicals, they grow in most cases. So you see, this divided country that we're living in right now has more to do with a financial downturn than we know or we would like to admit to ourselves. Why is it important that we know this and we recognize this? Because we can buck the trend. We can learn from history. We can be the exception, not the rule. And we can go, hey, hold on. Let's not fall into the trap that birthed Nazi Germany. We can actually get along with each other and things are going to work out. Radical thinking, I know, but that's my kind of radical. I hope it's yours as well.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So, you know, as much as we've been talking about how history has lessons to offer up, and if we look back a few more years than maybe we've been alive and on this planet, we can usually find some sort of indicator of how things are going to go. As much as we are discussing the fact that history's lessons are too often not learned and they're right there at hand for us to use if we want them, there are some things that I think are unique to every decade or millennia. Like, I don't know if we've ever seen this happen before. This is new territory we're entering in when crackpipe vending machines are popping up. Yes, crackpipe vending machines. This is a thing. They've arrived in several towns in New York a couple of weeks ago. And, well, now that people have figured out what they are freaking out. Full story on crackpipe vending machines because, you know, we tackle big and important issues around here a little later on after we get into the news. First, though, what with all the talking we've been doing about consumer confidence and how people are actually now changing careers, thinking, you know what, there's better for me out there. I'm going to quit my job and find it. And how people are, well, starting businesses in a way that they haven't in the past. If that's you, before you do tell your boss to take the job and shove it, let's listen to Arj Barker a little bit, talking about various career options that may or may not be open to you.
I love my job, but I used to work at a hospital, which was all right, but I'll tell you the worst thing about working at a hospital, it's really, really difficult to call in sick. Because they're like, all right, come on down. Oh, I don't feel that bad. Great, we'll see you in a few minutes. But I might get out of stand-up, though, because I'm going to open up an electrical power plant, and I'm going to be so rich from that. But people are like, Arj, it's really expensive to run a power plant. Yeah, I know it is. I'm not an idiot. Why do you think directly next door to the power plant, I'm going to open up a huge gym, and everyone's going to be like, oh, my God, I can't believe this gym's free. Yeah, just keep pedaling. Thank you. Good night.
Arj Barker on wise career decisions, or perhaps not. All right. There's always a new industry. There's always a fiscal paradigm that shifts. Like this time last year, did you know that there would be a market for manufacturers of crackpipe vending machines? No, you didn't. However, that exists. And you and I will talk about the crackpipe crackpipe vending machines that have been popping up in New York and how people feel about them and what they mean. After we take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. Did you see this? Oh, man. Paul McCartney, he said a lot of things in this really recent interview with the folks over at GQ magazine. He said some things that I actually can't mention on the radio and remain employed, but one of the more interesting and scandalous aspects of the things that he revealed was that, well, you know how the Beatles came out in the 60s, and the 60s were all about free love? Here's the thing. Paul McCartney revealed in this GQ interview that when the Beatles were in Las Vegas, they all ordered hookers, and he got himself two. Yeah. Paul McCartney ordered up multiple hookers while he was in Vegas, which is highly ironic coming from the guy who sang Can't Buy Me Love. Today, oh, you know what today is? Did you hear which disgraced celebrity is celebrating a birthday today? They're 51 years old today. Who are we talking about? Today is Louis C.K.'s 51st birthday. Yeah. And you know, this time last year, man, everybody in the world of entertainment would have wanted to be at Louis C.K.'s birthday. That would have been a hot celebrity ticket. And for someone like Louis C.K. to say that you were cool and invite you to his birthday, well, that would have been a big deal. Now, we know what type of person he is. The exact opposite is true. I would imagine Louis C.K.'s birthday celebration tonight will be sparsely attended, if at all. Yeah. Today is Louis C.K.'s 51st birthday, and you would imagine that it's going to be a sparsely attended party. And I can guarantee you that most of his friends that do show up, well, they will skip the handshake. Christina Aguilera has gone on the record saying that her days of getting into bed with famous people are over and done with. Yeah, Christina Aguilera has gone on the record saying that she never again in her life will date another celebrity. To which 3 out of the 4 Baldwin brothers replied, "You rang?" Online sales of Nike gear have jumped 31%. Yeah. Now, I don't know where you fall down on this issue, but you know who's doing rather well out of it? Nike. You know who else is doing rather well out of it? Colin Kaepernick. You know, you and I talked about this at length on the show the other day. Nike, don't really necessarily care about your opinion or my opinion. We've already made our decisions with regards to brands. I became an Adidas kid because of Run DMC and the Beastie Boys. And for that reason, I've always worn Adidas. Got a couple pairs of Nikes, but yeah. They care about people that, well, if you're arguing about whether or not Nike should have made Colin Kaepernick a spokesperson and given him his own clothing line on Facebook, well, you're already out of the demo. They're after 15 years old and under. People that are making up their minds now about which brands they're going to buy for the rest of their lives. It's interesting how brands get their hooks into you when you're young, right? I mean, they got to settle the people that have money, but what's the statistic? If you sell a car to a kid, your first car, there's a very good chance you're going to be driving that car or that brand of car for the rest of your life. Provided you have a decent experience with it. If it turns out to be a total lemon, then you're going to go the opposite direction. But car manufacturers know that if they can get you into your first car, they're going to have you for a lifetime. Do you remember when Mountain Dew ads started running? I remember being a little kid when those Mountain Dew ads started running in the 90s. And I remember seeing these Mountain Dew commercials with guys doing what were called them extreme sports. And they looked like they were having a great old time. They were snowboarding off the edge of mountaintops and drinking Mountain Dew. And I thought, I kind of want to be... And I remember thinking this when I was a child. I remember thinking I wanted to be a Mountain Dew guy. Yeah, it's weird, right? I've had very little Mountain Dew to drink in my life. It's not that I dislike it or anything, but I linked up in my mind I wanted to be a Mountain Dew guy. And I went out and tried Mountain Dew because of it. I just don't drink a lot of soda. But they got their hooks into me awfully early. So, it's interesting. Nike, not interested in you and me. We've already made our decisions. We've already decided where we're going to spend our sneaker dollar. They're after 15 years old and younger, and it appears to be going rather well. Online sales of Nike gear jumped 31% after the company signed Colin Kaepernick, which explains the new Adidas slogan. Donald Trump is a treasonous sex predator. Guess that'll be working out well for Adidas. Bob Woodward's book about the Trump administration has already sold 1 million copies. Or, as Trump says, it's doing terribly. The failing Bob Woodward. President Trump said the other day that everybody in the path of the hurricane should get out. Yes. Actually, he said it was very big and very wet. Did you hear this?
They haven't seen anything like what's coming at us in 25, 30 years. Maybe ever. It's tremendously big and tremendously wet.
Huh. Was he looking at meteorological reports for the hurricane, or did he perhaps get those confused with the new Stormy Daniels movie? Yeah, see what I did there? Oh man, did you see? In tremendously big and earth-shaking news, whew. Jeopardy is back this week, and Trebek has a beard. Did you catch this? Oh my gosh.
No need to inquire how I spent my summer vacation. Because so many of you people asked about it, I decided to regrow my mustache. But as you can see, things got a little out of hand. These hairs kept attracting friends. Whether I keep it or not depends on you. So go to our Jeopardy Facebook or Instagram pages and let us know how you feel. Hopefully it won't be a distraction for our players.
Yeah. They're having a vote, they're having fans vote online on whether or not Trebek should keep the beard, but here's the scandalous part. TMZ said he already shaved it off, and that the point is moot. All your clicking is only really helping them up the cost of their digital advertising because, well, the beard is already a thing of the past, apparently. Trebek decided it just wasn't him. And that's an interesting thing because Trebek has had the stash in the past. I always think it takes a special kind of individual to have the standalone stash. Like, it's a lot more common to have the full beard than the standalone mustache. Or a beard and a goatee as opposed to a standalone mustache. If you have a standalone mustache, well, there's very few men who can rock that and not look in some way, shape, or form odd or off. And I don't know how to describe it. But if you're a guy, you've definitely done this in the past. If you're not Tom Selleck or a fireman, it looks awfully odd. And we've all done this. We've all done that thing where we've maybe grown a beard or just gone a really, really long time without shaving. And then we start shaving and you say to yourself, I wonder what would happen if I just left this here on my upper lip. I wonder if I shaved all of this, how that would be, except for the top part of the whole situation. We've all done it. We've all had a beard. We've all been a long time without shaving, and we've all thought for one teeny second, maybe I'm like Tom Selleck. Maybe I'm like a fireman. Maybe I'm like Alex Trebek. Maybe I'm the type of guy that looks good with a standalone mustache. And if you're like me and everybody else I've ever talked to about this, no, it's never a good look. It always sort of makes me look like a rat, I think. Or some sort of... I hesitate to say why this is the case. And I don't want to diminish the whole situation, but for some weird-ass reason, having a standalone mustache just makes you look a little bit like a sexual predator. I've asked girls that I was dating. I was like, hey, I'm shaving. I'm going to leave the stash. What do you think? And no, you look like a rat-faced sexual predator has been something that I actually heard more than once. It's weird. You know what else is weird? Do we have time to get to this today? Let's talk for a second, if we can, about the idea of crackpipe vending machines. Yeah, crackpipe vending machines. I'd say it's probably a bad sign for a town if someone thinks there's enough crackheads in it that it's worth starting a new business to cater them. And, we talked earlier in the day about how small business and entrepreneurial confidence is up and people are seeing opportunities to make money in places they never have before. And, well, this has happened with crackheads and crackpipe vending machines in Long Island. Yeah, it happened in 3 towns on Long Island, New York: Brookhaven, Coram, and Medford. A few weeks ago, someone installed what seemed to be crackpipe vending machines in all 3 towns. The machines claim that they're selling pens for $2, but they're not pens. They're not really pens. They're a glass tube, complete with a filter and some ink. In theory, you could put those things together to make a pen, but really, people throw out the ink and use the pipe and the filter for smoking crack, and plenty of it. I know. Unbelievably weird stuff, right? No one's quite sure who installed the machines, but people in all 3 towns are freaking out about them, and the cops are investigating where they came from. They say they could possibly face criminal charges, the creators of the Crackpipe Vending machine. A councilman for Brookhaven said to sell a pipe is not illegal, but this is considered drug paraphernalia, and it's also being dispensed from a machine that was installed illegally per town code. We'll wait and see how this all plays out, but these are different times we're living in.
It's a crack pipe.
We've been here for 3 years. We've never had any problems, and now this. So it's pretty disgusting.
Did you see anyone actually using it?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people using it.
I wanted the community to see what was going on and try to get rid of it as quick as possible, because that's actually a bad area for drugs.